exactly 9 p.m. on this 6th day of September 2023. Many thanks for joining us here on Lookuptv. You're just in time for the insight on a day that the inaugural Africa Climate Summit did come to an end with, of course, the Nairobi Declaration. Remember, this summit is happening, or rather happened, ahead of the COP28 Climate Summit, Climate Summit that is set to happen in the United Arab Emirates on December, or rather in December this year. Now, the delegates, or rather today's summit, or the summit that ended today, had many resolutions, top among them a new financial architecture that will see African countries have ease of access to funding that will help them mitigate or curb the effects of climate change across the continent. Now that, among many other stories, including the Worldcoin probe and, of course, the Africa MPs, the dialogue, a session that happened today in the main chambers of the National Assembly, all that in this particular bulletin. But first of all, let's have a look at what's making headlines tonight. Tonight on The Insight, African leaders announced $23 billion in the Nairobi Declaration, targeting green growth as the climate summit comes to an end. Also tonight, ODM expels 5 members of parliament and gives hefty penalty to rebel MPs.
Each of the accused persons to be remanded accordingly. They are now convicts.
And 2 social workers convicted in a Nairobi court for trafficking children from Mama Lucy Hospital 3 years ago. Now, I am Ian Keitani, and our sign language interpreter is Josephine Auko. Remember, you can watch this particular bulletin live across all our social media platforms at Lookuptv on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as well as YouTube. Now, let's get started on the inaugural Africa Climate Summit, as I concluded today with the African heads of state pledging to set aside more funding of up to $100 billion to help in battling climate change. The leaders also resolved to use upcoming summits, including COP28, to continue calling for more funding to African countries in the fight against climate change. After 3 days of consultations and deliberations on tackling climate change, curtains came down on the inaugural Africa Climate Summit, with the summit resolving to call for a new financial architecture for African countries in the fight against the effects of climate change, while calling on their European counterparts to join hands with them in fighting climate change.
We demand a fair playing ground for our countries to access the investment needed to unlock the potential and translate it into opportunities. We further demand a just multilateral development finance architecture to liberate our economies from odious debt and onerous barriers to necessary financial resources. We are clear in our minds and hearts that the international community must walk with us in this journey into a future of prosperity and security in an ecologically balanced, thriving planet.
It is a reprieve for African countries after various key stakeholders promised at least $23 billion to help in curbing the effects of climate change.
During this action-focused summit, various stakeholders, including governments, the private sector, multilateral banks and philanthropists, have made substantial commitments totaling a remarkable $23 billion for green growth, mitigation and adaptation efforts across Africa. Notable highlights include a transformative partnership investing $60 million over 2 years in expanding grid access in rural Burundi. A $4.5 billion commitment from the UAE, represented here by my brother, to boost renewable energy.
With the summit calling on large emitters to work around reducing toxic emissions and align itself with the Paris Declaration, President RUTO noted that the signing of the green hydrogen strategy with the European Union will help in creating employment, with leaders urged to include the youth in matters environmental conservation.
Kenya's green hydrogen strategy with the European Union is expected to drive and accelerate green manufacturing and create thousands of new high-value jobs in addition to to attracting large private sector investments. Additionally, there has been a notable increase in adaptation financing, reflecting a deep commitment to Africa's sustainable future and energy systems, aligning with the ambitious Nairobi Declaration.
With various climate summits on the horizon, including a COP28 scheduled to take place at the end of this year, the African heads of state vowed to use all available platforms to raise their concerns in regards to matters climate change.
We shall use every available opportunity in the busy multilateral calendar, from the G20 meeting, the United Nations General Assembly in a fortnight, the annual meetings of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund soon thereafter, as well as the COP28, to further prosecute our agenda.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv. Now, that particular story was produced by Nancy Nelima. Now, more than 500 members of parliament from African countries today convened at parliament buildings to discuss legislative interventions to mitigate the effects of climate change in the continent. Now, the meeting was part of the inaugural Africa Climate Summit that came to an end today. At a joint sitting during the African parliamentary sitting presided over by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, legislators unanimously concurred that parliaments are key to forging consensus on modalities of unlocking Africa's vast potential to positively impact the climate agenda, calling on unity across African lawmakers to make use of the already existing resources.
That we strive to move ourselves from a continent of despair to a continent of hope. Because the future is with us. The future is right here in Africa. There are three lungs of the world in terms of climate: the Congo, the Amazon, and the Borneo in Indonesia. But the Congo is the biggest, the richest ecosystem, and if we protect it, its catalytic effect on many other parts of Africa will be felt.
All legislators agreed that African lawmakers should unite and strengthen ties for the sake of the African continent as it works towards attracting investors for its local market.
However, we still have challenges. The challenges that we have as a country, and that may not only be for Uganda, it could also be to other countries, is we are delving into using renewable energies like solar, among others, that have poor quality. So we need to build our own potential within Africa, within the country, to be able to assemble our own energy plants within the country so that we do not really rely on poor quality that is brought from the different parts of the world.
We're very pleased with the ambition Kenya has provided for us now on the climate front, but there is a lot we can learn from you. We were very inspired to see that, in fact, Kenya at 92% renewables in their energy mix can speak truth to Germany, to the United States, to China. Why? Because Africa is doing what they have not done. They've caused the climate problem, but in fact, Africans are leading the transformation.
The session saw over 500 African lawmakers convene at the August House as they mark the last day of the African Climate Summit, as Kenya is touted the best with 92% renewable energy in its joint effort in fight against climatic changes.
Not so bad, I would say. And 5 years ago, with some friends, we decided to start with the Global Renewable Forum, Global Renewable Congress, because we would like to support parliamentarians who have the goal of 100% renewables. And that's why I am working very close with Kende and other parliamentarians, because we would like to decide what can we do better, you know? So make practical work, make our homework.
Stanley Lugaria, Lookuptv. Still on climate matters, and as the climate conversation takes center stage here in Nairobi, the media has been termed as a critical component in amplifying the climate voices and the impact of climate change. Now, this came up during a roundtable media conversation organized by different organizations, which includes High Voice and Journalists for Human Rights.
It is a roundtable conversation with journalists that sought to explore how grassroots stories on climate action can be amplified in the mainstream media. This coming at a time when the country is hosting the Africa Climate Summit.
Media organizations do not, most of the time, allocate funds to cover climate change, to cover environment. The only time a journalist is likely to get an opportunity to go and cover anything around climate change is when there is a disaster. When there is drought in Turkana or Marsabit, which is actually as a result of climate change.
Producing climate change stories is very expensive, and our media organizations cannot afford to support journalists all of the time. For example, Nairobi-based journalists do not have many stories about climate change to report on. So we must travel to where these stories are. This includes, for example, flying to Turkana, which I will say is one of the farthest areas and with people who are affected by climate change. Journalists require ongoing capacity building in order to continue covering climate change stories. We can be consistent in our reporting on the subject because of this consistency, if we get the support.
Of the lighting instruments that are coming up, that are new technology, how do we educate them to become distributors and sellers to the other people in their villages so that they can become economically empowered? How do we do that? We can only do that through education and information. However, there's not enough people to do that. So the key stakeholders who are partners in those areas, including the fourth estate, need to come together so that we all rally behind these issues and help our women see the opportunities that exist within the environment space that is actually offering them solutions that can help them become better in their lives.
Hivos, Mama Doing Good and Journalists for Human Rights, the partners in this event, argue that at the grassroots is where the urgency is felt the most, making the conversation about cultivating a grassroots movement that turns every Kenyan into a committed conversationist and a catalyst for change.
We in Africa are saying that we are going to act on the issues that are affecting us from a climate perspective.
We should not take advantage of this resilience that is displayed by our people and allow the heavy emitters of carbon dioxide to get away with it by not paying for the adoption costs.
The Moro village live in the highland. And during this increase of water from the lakes, they were locked in a highland. And therefore, they could not access the amenities. The school is the other side outside the lake, the dispensary and the market.
Sometimes there's an inability of journalists to understand climate change as a bit. When a journalist goes to cover farming or drought, is that climate change? Are they able to link that to the effects of the changing, weather patterns? Are they able to link that to climate change?
As the sun sets on the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi, the conversation about climate in Africa has just been amplified from the grassroots to the headlines and then to the boardrooms. The climate conversation is taking shape. Brian Amwai, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Brian Amwai, for that particular story. Now, Wildkind Chief Executive Officer Alex Blanier has stated that the company is not in any way involved in mining data or later selling the said data. Now, but they're actively involved in authenticating if one is human and uniquely categorizing them. Now, appearing before the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, the Wildkind stakeholders claim that the 48 ORBs used had the prerequisite clearance from CAK, that is the Communication Authority of Kenya, before they started being used, and that over 600,000 Kenyans have downloaded the app so far.
The Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee presiding over investigations against the Wildkind company has today raised concerns claiming that the Data Commission company has revoked their registration that was done months ago after the public started raising questions about the ongoing activities in the country.
Just trying to inform you, we had the KICC here, and the booking was done for a day, and we had about 3,000 Kenyans lining up that day. So you can imagine having 3,000 plus people lining, going through the scanning, the information desk, so it was not practically possible.
Dagoretti South MP John Kiare roasting the cryptocurrency officials, expressing concerns on how informed were the Kenyans at the time of registration.
Is WorldCoin, as is formulated, a project or an effort that was geared towards enrolling Kenyans into a new world system of a decentralized currency? Would you term your orb as a communication device? And if you classify it as a communication device, is it known to you that in Kenya, any telecommunication device has to get a type approval from the Communications Authority?
Speaking at the City Hall mini chambers during an engaging sitting, the CEO WorldCoin Alex Blania has explained that the activities didn't violate any laws of the land and they had a legal team that were advising them.
I could not stronger and more forcefully say that that is absolutely not possible. The orb is certified. First of all, the orb is produced in Germany. It is certified by the German, one of the strictest certification agencies in the world, TÜV Rheinland. It also has been, all the certifications I think are even listed in this document, and you can study in more detail. But I think the most important question here, the most important statement is, the orb cannot, absolutely impossible, cause any health issues.
Questions of whether the cryptocurrency company came in as a business entity or a data collecting company is still in question.
Specific on what gave you the strength to be able to go to the ground, hire the team which you hired through the marketing sense, and start collecting data, because that is very, very important.
WorldCoin is not a company, but rather an investment under the Tools of Humanity, a company based in the United States of America. Thomas Sedo explains that Kenya was a suitable target due to its adoption of technology.
Tools for Humanity is the company that started this journey. As Alex said, it was founded by him and Sam Altman, our most famous colleague, and a third person, Max Novenstern, who's no longer with our project. We have two entities, one in the United States, where I sit and work, and a wholly owned subsidiary in Germany.
Nevertheless, they justified why they were scanning the iris, saying that this was to ascertain that indeed one was a unique human being. The sitting has been adjourned until tomorrow by the ad hoc chairperson committee. Ruga Ival, Lookuptv.
Now on to matters of politics, and the Orange Democratic Movement, that is ODM, has expelled 5 members of parliament as it cracks the whip on rebels. Of the 5, GM MP Elisha Odhiambo, South Suba's Carolee Omondi, Bondo MP Gideon Ochando, Langata MP Felix Odiwuor, aka Jalango, and Kisumu Senator Professor Tom Ojienda have been kicked out of the party for associating closely with the Kenya Kwanza government. The party said the resolution was arrived at during a National Executive Committee on Wednesday. Now Rongo MP Paul Abor and his Uriri counterpart Mark Nyamita, who also faced similar allegations, were on the other hand fined 1 million shillings each to be paid within 60 days. Nairobi Woman Representative Esther Passaris was also reprimanded for defiance of the party position and was ordered to issue a written apology to the party within 7 days and fined 250,000 Kenya shillings, set to be paid within the next 60 days. Now, a Nairobi court has convicted 2 social workers for trafficking 3 infants 3 years ago at Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital. The court, in its decision, said that the prosecution had established case against them and that the 2 acted in disregard of the social workers' ethics. Nishin Mengasia with the details.
Selina Adundo and Fred Leparan, former social workers, have been convicted of trafficking 3 infants 3 years ago at Mama Lucy Hospital.
And the Office of the Medical Social Worker had to ensure that after the children are discharged, a safe place for these children had to be established, having worked together with the Children's Office. This was not the case.
Magistrate Esther Kimilu noted that there was evidence that there was a conversation between Fred, Selina and Rose, who posed as the buyer of the children, as the evidence was clear and recorded in a videotape. The court said that Fred decided to hand over the children to Rose against the acts and ethics of social workers.
This person is heard expressing some fears that this discussion should be held in confidence and that there need to be trust. Little did he know the whistleblower and Rose were in a meeting.
The prosecution told the court that between 1st March 2020 and November 16, 2020, at Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital in Embakasi Central within Nairobi, jointly with others not before the court, they conspired to commit a felony, namely trafficking persons.
I am of the view that the Office of Medical Social Worker at that time did not do their duty because there was no communication between the office and the Children's Office.
During the court hearing, one of the witnesses narrated to the court how Fred Leparan took 300,000 shillings from a journalist in an illegal sale of abandoned babies at the hospital. The court has now ordered the two to be remanded accordingly, as they are now convicts.
Remand, while the second accused person shall be remanded at Langata.
Nushin Mungasia, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Now, a student in Kisii is appealing to the government and Good Samaritans to help him secure his hard-earned opportunity at the University of Nairobi to pursue medicine. Geoffrey Isaboke has been unable to further his education due to fee arrears from his secondary school. Faith Bonareri shares the following story.
Geoffrey Isaboke sits deep in thoughts at his home in Mogire, Kisii County, as he ponders what his future holds. He has seen brighter days, especially when he scored an A in the 2022 KCSE exams. The joy was, however, short-lived after he failed to secure a place at the University of Nairobi, where he was called to pursue a medical course.
Up to now, the your result slip, I'm a living certificate in ni requirements before niende UON, School of Medicine. So, bado kuna fee pending around 60,000 tunafaa kulipa. Alafu pia kuna pesa ingine pia ile kwa 10k ya motivation pia bado tujalipa.
For months he has been unable to clear outstanding debt of 70,000 shillings in the secondary school, hence missing out on a result slip. According to his mother Jacqueline Maina, a well-wisher had funded Maina's secondary education up to Form 3 before he withdrew the scholarship due to sickness, making her struggle to pay for the rest of the balance fee.
Sina mahali penye nitatoa school fees niende kulipia huyu mtoto. Sasa ndio maana nilikuwa naomba serikali yetu inisaidie. Mheshimiwa Jarson Njoke, MCA juu Omwando na Simba Arati gavana yetu ya Kisii County na Manjoku mwenye anasaidia kwa elimu. Nimeomba serikali yetu inisaidie huyu mtoto atoke nje aende shule. Sina penye nitatoa pesa.
Jacqueline is now appealing to the government and well-wishers to help her foot for her son's university education. Faith Bonareri, Lookuptv.
Well, this is a sad state of affairs, and we do hope that the leaders can come to the rescue, or any good Samaritan can come to Isaboke's rescue. Now, on that note, we wrap up our bulletin this particular evening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. But see you again tomorrow as we bring you stories making headlines across the country, of course, including the ongoing WorldCoin investigations. But until then, do have yourself a lovely night, and like always, God bless.